You're listening to The Phillip Jordan Show.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Phillip Jordan Show right here on Wiregrass Daily News Sports. I'm your host, Phillip Jordan, in-studio host and producer of the Woods Football on 96.9 The Legend. Happy Friday. Originally planned for this to come out on a Thursday. Plans changed. We're coming to you on a Friday, and we're ending the week right. This is a fantastic Friday, and I have two great guests coming on the show today. I'll first be joined by Spencer McLaughlin. He is the host of Locked On Ducks and Locked On Pac-12, also the radio voice of the Southern Utah Athletics. And we will talk with him about the Pac-12, about Washington playing against Texas. We had you covered early in the week with Texas. Now we're looking at Washington. Next week, we'll be previewing Alabama and Michigan. So got you covered here when it comes to the college football playoff here on the Phillip Jordan Show. But I said he also is the host of Locked On Ducks. We will talk to Spencer about the Oregon Ducks, in particular, former Auburn quarterback Bo Nix. So really fun conversation there. Then after that, I'll be joined by Chase Robinson. He does Jacksonville State play-by-play over on ESPN Plus. So we will talk about the Jacksonville State Gamecocks playing their first ever bowl game. They will be playing in New Orleans Bowl on Saturday, tomorrow, against Louisiana. That is a 1:15 kickoff. So we get Chase on here, and we'll break down the season. What does it mean for Jacksonville State getting into this bowl game, and get his thoughts on this upcoming matchup. So a lot of good stuff here on today's edition of the Phillip Jordan Show. You can check out the Phillip Jordan Show podcast over at wiregrassdailynews.com or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review, and I will read it on a future edition of the show. And if you leave just 4 stars, you are just a straight-up hater. You can email me at sports.phillipjordan@gmail.com. Everybody, my first guest today here on the Phillip Jordan Show, part of Wiregrass Daily News Sports, is Spencer McLaughlin. He is the host of Locked On Ducks, also Locked On Pac-12, which is a big reason why we have him on today, and also the voice of the Southern Utah Thunderbirds. Spencer, I appreciate you taking time coming on the show. Obviously, we're going to get into the Sugar Bowl, Washington, and Texas, but I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, great to be on with you, Phillip, and appreciate you plugging my T-Birds there. It's an aspect of my career that not everybody always knows about, but one that I love quite a bit. And they just had their best football season in 6 years, so it's been a blast.
I have an appreciation for broadcasters. So whenever I have a chance to talk to one, you're not the only one I'm having on this podcast today. So I have another guest coming on later today. He does that as well, covering the Jacksonville State Gamecocks. So I always enjoy it when I talk to the people that get behind the microphone at games as well.
Best. It's the best. Like I love podcasting, and it's really fun. And I do the 2 daily shows that I host, but like play-by-play is just when you get a good crowd. That like that's like a high. Like for me, calling a college basketball game when the crowd is electric, nothing like that. Nothing.
Yeah, and when we do this, we can always just pause or go back and re-record. And I do high school football. I'm on the producing side. I'm in the studio, but still, there's something about a live broadcast because you got one shot at it. You got one shot to get it right. You don't get to re-record.
And it can be frustrating too. Like I don't have a camera on me when I'm just calling the game, but if I mess up a call in the moment, I am mad at myself. I am clenching my fist. I'll throw a pen on the ground. I'll like mouth a swear word because I obviously don't want to say it, but I need to like get the frustration out so that I can refocus. Because like you said, you get one shot at it. But when you get it right in the moment and it, best feeling in the world.
Talk about getting it right. The Pac-12 got it right this season.
This season, that's the only way they got it right. They didn't do anything else right.
On the field.
There we go.
On the field, they got it right. Terrific season just for the conference overall. Of course, with Washington winning, beating Oregon there in the Pac-12 championship game. Arizona, good year Oregon State, and you had a lot of talking points. USC wasn't good, but you had Caleb Williams, what's going on there. Of course, Colorado and the Deion Sanders side of things, and just some other good teams too as well. Just a very, very fun, interesting year in football for the Pac-12.
Yeah, it makes it all the more puzzling, frustrating, saddening that the league is going away, because you look at this great season and all the storylines you mentioned, right? Colorado was the epicenter of college football for about an hour before people realized they weren't actually good. And, Oregon with Bo Nix, and Washington and Michael Penix, and the great games that they played, and USC's disappointing year. And, going into next season, it would be about, hey, how can USC bounce back? And it's still going to be that for the Trojans, but they're going to do it in the Big Ten, of course. And I just think it's a shame. And I mean, the depth of the conference has never been better. I mean, you even look at a 5-7 Washington State team that got off to a 4-0 start, beat a couple of ranked teams. They knocked off a 7-5 Wisconsin team for the second year in a row. They have, a lot of difficult circumstances up in Pullman that are being exacerbated by this whole, realignment nonsense. But Jake Dickert's a good football coach, and they had a good quarterback in Cam Ward, who's in the portal now for the last couple of years. And I think that for the conference to go out like that is, on the one hand, fitting, and on the other hand, it just drives home the frustration that I and many other West Coast football fans have of why are we here? Why is this? Why are we doing this? Why is this going away? Look at this great product. Like, by any measure, the Pac-12 is the deepest conference, and it was certainly one of the most entertaining. I'd argue the most entertaining, because you had big headline games like Oregon against Washington, or Washington at Oregon State, or a bunch of other great matchups. But it wasn't like the entire season boiled down to that. When you watch the Big Ten, where, 4 Pac schools are going, Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA, when you look at the Big Ten this year, there's like 3 games that are interesting. Michigan, Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. Every other game in the Big Ten, I don't think I watched start to finish another Big Ten football game. I watched all of those because they were great. But there were so many great matchups in the Pac-12 just week after week. And you look at the Big Ten, you're like, yeah, wake me up when Michigan is playing a real football team. Mm-hmm. Wake me up when Ohio State's playing somebody who can push them. And in the SEC, I think you had better competitive balance. In the ACC, it was pretty top heavy, I think. And the Pac-12 just had so much depth. I mean, at one point in time, they had 7 ranked teams coming out of non-conference play. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah, it was. And look, for me, someone over here in Alabama, on the time zone, I'm in Central Time Zone, Pac-12 after dark. That was
Pac-12 after dark. Gosh, it never disappoints.
So
never let you down.
When I would look at the schedule for the weekend, I always say, okay, I know when the SEC or the games, at 6:30 are going to end. Okay, who am I getting at 9:30 Central Time? That was always a big thing for me looking it up. Yes, I know we'll still have those time slots, but it's just not the same.
It's not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same.
I mean, just because you put a game on at 9:30 does not make it the same as Pac-12 after dark.
Nothing. I think the greatest epitome of Pac-12 after dark was UCLA Washington State in like 2018 or 19. UCLA was down like 33-7, I think, going into the fourth. Or they staged some crazy. The final score is like 67-62. Let me look it up. It was insane. It was 67-63 was the final score. UCLA scored 29 points in the fourth quarter to win and 50 in the second half. They were down 35-17 at the break. Came back and won on the road. Pac-12 after dark. That's what it was right there.
Yeah, so nothing else can compete. Which the SEC tries it. They try to put an 8 o'clock game on once or twice a year, and
they don't know. They don't know how to do it right.
We
out west have perfected the art of take a late night game and just make it the craziest bleeping thing imaginable.
Yeah, so it's going to be missed. But let's talk about this Washington Husky team, 13-0. What were your preseason expectations for this team coming into the season?
Yeah, I thought they'd be a Pac-12 contender, 100%. I had them at 10-2 before the season. They ended the year 12-0, and it's because they're just so good in close games. And when you look at the last couple of seasons, they haven't lost since early October 2022. That's the last time they took the field and lost a football game. And, they've been basically the same team for the last couple of seasons, and that's been a really, really good football team. 11 wins that last year, 13 this year, going into the Sugar Bowl against Texas, where they're once again an underdog, which I think actually benefits them, because when you've won that many games in a row, I think it's easy to, lose that chip, lose that edge that you need to play with to win. But when you're, an underdog, heck, I think it was a huge motivational factor for them against Oregon, and they outplayed the Ducks for 4 quarters in that one. So I think that for Washington, there's a team that when you come down the stretch in a tight game, they're going to be good. They're going to be well coached. They're going to have the right play call. They're good situationally. Their defense is kind of hit and miss. When it hits, it's really good, but they've certainly had some misses on their performances this year. And I think that for them, they've had some really good moments, particularly against Oregon, much to my chagrin at times, but they deserve a lot of credit. They've had, really good stretches of defense and situational moments on the defensive side of the ball. And I think that they're, a little bit better than people think, but it's certainly the weaker of their two sides, because their offense is just, you know what they're going to do. They're going to snap it back to Michael Penix, and they're going to take some deep shots that are wide receivers. And guess what? There's not a damn thing you can do about it. I don't care who your corners are. I don't care how good a position they're in. Penix will throw an accurate ball, and a Dunze or McMillan or Polk will go up and make a catch. And you just can't really stop that. The advantage in sports is to the person who's got the ball and is going to make a play. In football, that's offense. In basketball, it's offense. And in baseball, it's pitching. And Washington just knows how to use that to their advantage, I think, as well as anybody in the country. And that's what makes them such a tough matchup to stop. And, Texas's front four, I think, is really good. I think they are physical. They are tough to run on. But guess what? Washington doesn't really care about running the football. If they can, they will. But if they can't, they can still move the football really effectively.
Yeah, I think, too, you look at it, and it just for me, I've watched a few Washington games throughout the year, checking them out, with what they were doing. You don't really hear Dylan Johnson talked about a lot. They're running back.
Second team all Pac-12.
Yeah, over 1,000 yards, 14 touchdowns. But it's like, oh, yeah, they had – I honestly, when I was prepping for this, I was shocked that they had a 1,000-yard rusher.
I think most people would be.
Because just what you see with the aerial assault with Penix and the receivers, I mean, for Odunze, he has almost 18 yards a catch. And then you've got Polk, that's 17 yards. So the big play down the field. Usually you got maybe one guy that's the big play guy, and then the other one's some more underneath. Both of your guys like that. I mean, that's
all three. That's the thing about them is those three receivers are all NFL guys. Odunze is going to be probably a top 10, no later than top 15 pick. He'll be probably the second receiver off the board after Marvin Harrison Jr. in next year's NFL draft. All three guys can do anything and everything. Now, I don't think any of them are, as prolific in the run after the catch. Like, I think they're good and capable, but what they do so well to create big plays is not catch, juke a guy. They're not going out there like Tyreek Hill or what's another good compare? A Malik Neighbors, for instance. That's not really what they do. Penix is just so accurate with his downfield passing game, and their route running is so good. Their contested catch ability is ridiculous, and their hands are phenomenal. Those three components, it's not that they can't run after the catch, but watch how many times they set these guys up for screens. It's not very often, because I don't think that's where they're at their best. When they are pushing the envelope, and what their offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb, does a phenomenal job of, and it was a masterclass against Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game, who had a really good defense. He got receivers matched up with Oregon safeties, and the Duck safeties could not cover the Washington receivers. Grubb knew that, and so every key situation, every third down, every time they needed a play, they would get a receiver on a safety, and it was game over, no matter who it was. McMillan cooked a safety a couple times. Odunze would get matched up on safeties, and you can't shadow a guy, because if you do, guess what? The other guys are going to get matchups that are more advantageous. It's a really difficult offense to stop.
Oh, and looking at defensively, the numbers are great. 8th total defense in the Pac-12. They give up 263 yards through the air a game, going against that Texas offense with Quinn Ewers. And the way he's been playing the last 2 games, he's been playing lights out. And then what they have on the outside, if Xavier Worthy is healthy, to play in the game. And you got A.D. Mitchell on the other side, a former Georgia player who's used to being in these moments. They found ways with Jonathan Brooks being injured to still run the ball effectively. How do you see the Washington defense going up against that Texas offense?
Yeah, I was really impressed with their defense against Oregon in the title game. It was their best defensive performance of the year, and I don't think it's particularly close. I don't know that there is a second, because their best, statistical output would have been against Arizona State, a team that ended the year 3-9. So I think that for Washington's defense, the key is going to be what they did against Oregon very well, and that's tackling in space, because Steve Sarkisian is a great play caller. He is really clever. He knows how to get his guys the ball in the open field and create one-on-one situations and say, you got to make a tackle. Well, Oregon's Will Stein has been doing that all season long, and Washington's guys, they just make tackles. Go watch, just game highlights on YouTube, and you'll see a number of instances in which Oregon players are brought down in the open field, whereas in the previous two matchups, which were both Washington wins, those tackles just weren't being made consistently. Bucky Irving was stifled. Troy Franklin had one of his worst games of the year. The secondary played exceptionally well for Washington, but the key difference for me was tackling in space. I think that is what, unlocks the potential for this Washington defense that's got some high caliber players. ZTF and Braylon Trice, that's a dynamic, powerful combination coming off the edge to get after the passer. And then you have Edwan Ulofoshio at linebacker, who is an all-conference guy. I think he was on like a third-team All-American list. He's been really good. And then their key in the secondary, I think, is Jabbar Muhammad, the Oklahoma State transfer. He is a lockdown kind of guy. And I think that when he's playing well, Washington secondary, gets a big boost. And it's going to be a really fun matchup. I lean towards the Texas offense there just because, they haven't seen any of these players before, whereas they had with Oregon, and they were familiar with some of the stuff the Ducks were going to run. And I expect Sarkisian to come out with a pretty brand new game plan. And I know it's a rematch of the Alamo Bowl, but I think you're going to see stuff from both of these offenses that you just haven't seen this season. And I'm excited for both of these semifinal matchups. I think they're going to be great games. And I think this one, you're going to have both teams over 30. And I do think Washington wins.
Yeah, I feel like everybody's paying attention to Alabama, Michigan, which, I get it. It's the jerseys, the classic uniforms. You're playing at the Rose Bowl. But this one right here, I feel like, is the one that could steal the day, could steal the show.
I agree.
With these two quarterbacks and these two, it's going to be fun. But you're looking at two guys that are NFL quarterbacks, too. Let's be honest. Milroe and J.J. McCarthy are probably not going to be playing in the NFL.
Nope.
Not very long if they do get there.
At least not playing in the way that Penix and Ewers could be. Yeah. I think both guys are capable of being, franchise quarterbacks if they go to the right situation.
Mm-hmm. So anything else, any other keys to this matchup that you could think of? I'm not going to ask you to make prediction when you're going to do that on your show. And number two, we still got a few weeks before these two teams play. So it's a little
you got to let the stuff marinate with a game of this magnitude. You can't be calling your shot too early. I think that for Washington, their ability to get pressure and Texas's ability to get pressure, I think that dynamic is going to be really critical, because what disrupts a great quarterback more than anything? Pressure. Mm-hmm. And Oregon tried to blitz Michael Penix the way Arizona State did when they held him without an offensive touchdown in Seattle, back on October 21st. And guess what? Oregon couldn't get any pressure because Washington's offensive line is very good. And this is why, I do like Washington in the game. Texas's strength defensively is not their secondary, it's their front four. And they're really good. But guess what? Oregon's front is really good, and they have been all year, and they couldn't touch Penix. They did not pressure him consistently. He had time to throw. I think he's going to have time to throw again. I mean, you got NFL caliber players like Brandon Dorlus on that Oregon defensive line. You got a former 5-star in Jordan Birch who's been great. Yeah, I mean, they got a great depth of talent in that front seven, and Washington's offensive line and their protection game plan was just better. It was just better, and if you give Penix time to throw, that's game over.
And the last thing I want to talk to you about, we're going to get out of here on this. Of course, I mentioned at the top, I host a Locked On Ducks. And as a guy that covers Auburn for Last Word on College Football, and you guys, the Oregon quarterback was Bo Nix the last 2 years. And I'm happy for Bo Nix. A lot of Auburn fans have some negative feelings about him going to Oregon and stuff. I'm like, hey, get away from Brian Harsin, number one, and then two, just sometimes change the scenery is the best. I just want to ask, how was Oregon able to get the best out of Bo Nix? Because I'm going to tell you what, when he was at Auburn, it was always the Bo Nix experience. You just did from play to play.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't know what you was going to get. He seemed a lot more buttoned up, more polished while he was there at Oregon.
Yeah, he absolutely was. I think it was threefold. I think number one, you gave him better offensive coaching. At number two, you gave him a running game, which he didn't have at Auburn. And number three, you put him in a situation where, he's the leader of a team that can actually compete in the conference and on a national level. And, you give him players like Troy Franklin. He had a couple good receivers down at Auburn, but I remember watching those games. Heck, I remember watching the Oregon game that he debuted in back in 2019. And, they didn't really do a lot offensively in that football game. In fact, they caught some breaks, and Oregon, kind of handed them the football game in more ways than one. I know neither team played perfect, but Oregon, had a fumble down inside the 10-yard line that got returned to the other 10-yard line, missed an 18-yard field goal, and a couple other things where they were just really sloppy in that game. And, as I watched Bo Nix's career progress at Auburn, I just saw a guy who, was having to play hero ball all the time, and he didn't have to do that at Oregon. He was allowed to just sit in the pocket, use his experience and knowing football as well as he does, to where he's in complete command of Oregon's offense this year. And he was just allowed to sit back there and facilitate. And I think that's what was missing at Auburn, was the ability for him to not be pressured in the pocket all the time. He was one of the fewest sacked quarterbacks, or one of the least sacked quarterbacks over the last 2 years in all of college football. Oregon's had a couple of great offensive lines. They had a running game, so they had balance. You had great receivers, and I think he had some better offensive coaching as well. After watching him for the last 2 years, I just look at Auburn. I'm like, how did you ruin this guy? What were you doing down there? But the answer is, you made the Brian Harsin hire, who apparently nobody wanted anyway.
Yeah, look, Gus Malzahn, I don't think his offense fit Bo Nix either. That was another thing, because that's who was the coach when he went to Auburn. He had a great running back in Tank Bix, because they can never block for him, and that was always an issue, which Hugh Freeze is fixing at Auburn right now, is the offense line. Real quick before we get out of here, the new quarterback, Dylan Gabriel, coming from Oklahoma, who's a future SEC team that Auburn had to deal with. But how does he fit in with Oregon and what they like to do?
I think he fits in well. Ran a good amount of RPO stuff at Oklahoma. Will Stein, the offensive coordinator, who was a finalist for the Broyles Award this year, did a really good job utilizing that in Oregon's offense. And I'm curious to see how much he runs Dylan Gabriel, because Kenny Dillingham ran Bo Nix a lot more last year than Bo ran this year. And Bo was a better player this year, statistically, eyeball test, health-wise as well. He got injured, and it derailed Oregon's season last year when Bo Nix ran the ball on a 3rd and goal against Washington before they could have, punched it in for a touchdown and iced the game. Instead, they end up losing. He's hurt, and everything kind of, falls apart from there. So I think that for Will Stein, he's got a guy who knows how to facilitate, knows how to read a defense, knows how to get the ball accurately where it needs to go. Almost 70% completion this year. I think Dylan Gabriel is a good addition for the Ducks and helps keep them competitive in the college football playoff picture.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see him play. Played really great for Oklahoma this year.
Yep, he played well,
Gabriel. And especially that Texas game. I mean, just the clutchness. He showed he has that clutch gene, the way he controlled that last possession of the game where they won against Texas. And Spencer, this has been fun. Having you on. We talked off air. We were supposed to do this last year. I got sick. It just couldn't happen. I'm glad we was able to make it happen.
Me too.
This time. For the listeners and viewers out there, where can they find you and all the work you're doing?
Yeah, I host Locked On Pac-12 and Locked On Ducks Monday through Friday. It's on YouTube. Both shows are, and wherever you get your podcasts. And I'm on X at Smalls_55 and at LO_Pac-12 and at Locked On Ducks as well. Feel free to drop me any notes over there. But yeah, Phillip, glad you're doing well this year, and we were able to make it work. Is good to come on with you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I hope maybe we can do this again sometime down the road.
Absolutely.
96.9 The Legend is your connection to classic country legends. But Digio Strategies has other options too. News Talk 103.9 is your source for America's top news and entertainment shows like Rick and Bubba in the morning, Glenn Beck from 9 till 11 a.m., and Clay Travis and Buck Sexton middays from 11 a.m. till 2 p.m. Sean Hannity, Lars Larson, Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, and others fill your day with the latest news and views from America's top conservative voices. America at Night and Coast to Coast AM keep you company and connected throughout the night. Plus, Fox News, the Alabama Radio Network, and Wiregrass Daily News keep you informed with national, international, state, and local news. And with more musical choices like All the Hits 106.7 KMX, Today's Country 95.5 WTVY, and Music 107.7, Digio Strategies gives you more choices and more variety. Listen on air, online, and on our apps. 96.9 The Legend is just the beginning.
Everybody joining me next up here on the Phillip Jordan Show right here on Wiregrass Daily News Sports is Chase Robinson, play-by-play for football and basketball for Jacksonville State over on ESPN Plus. Does some high school football too as well, covering Oxford. So they had a good season as well. Of course, us down here, we had a good season with Dothan. So, good high school football. We know what that looks like, both of us. But Chase, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, man. Really appreciate you having me on, Phillip. This is going to be fun.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I am trying to get all the in-state schools covered with bowl season. Of course, the only in-state school that's not going through a bowl game was UAB. So we got good stuff here from the state of Alabama when it comes to bowl season.
Yeah, and I love that. I love the fact that we have so many in bowl games, and I mean, that just shows the level of football here in the state of Alabama.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm sure Trent Dilfer is going to get that thing going well up there at UAB at some point too as well. Now, before we jump into Jacksonville State and just kind of talk about the team and the bowl matchup with Louisiana this Saturday, just for you, how long have you been doing the play-by-play over at ESPN Plus for Jacksonville State?
Yeah, so it's a lot of fun, and about 4 years ago, I guess, is when it all really started, of the partnership with Jacksonville State and ESPN Plus. When Jacksonville State was in the OVC, they had the OVC Digital Network for a long time, and that's where all the games were, and they just kind of used the radio feed to do those broadcasts. But when ESPN Plus came 4 years ago, they wanted some local talent on there, so Mickey Shadracks and myself, we do the games, and Mickey's been broadcasting in this part of the state for 30 years or so. Gerhard Mathagani, who's now down in Mobile, he was part of our kind of rotation as well. But 4 years ago, they called on us as kind of the local sports broadcasters to do these games, and I've seen some really great football games, or really great basketball games while in my time there at Jacksonville State. And I'm from right outside of Jacksonville. Went to school there, so to be able to broadcast the Gamecocks is a lot of fun for me.
So I'm going to ask you, and I don't mean this as a joke. It will come across as that to a degree, but has anybody ever asked you how is it to live in the state of Florida?
Yes, and there's especially I'll see people, whether it's SEC media days or something like that, where people are not really familiar with it. And they'll say that, and I have to correct them quickly. But if you're not familiar with Group of Five football or FCS football, and even if you are, I think the big misconception is it's Jacksonville, Florida. And actually, a couple of years ago, it was Jacksonville State and Jacksonville in the ASUN the ASUN semifinals of basketball, and I was doing that one. And that was a lot of Jacksonville. It was almost hard to call that game with both teams having Jacksonville in their name.
Yeah, there should be a rule against that in that situation.
Yes, and there should be, but a lot of people big misconception on and even with Jackson State because they go by JSU. Jacksonville State for a long time went by JSU, recently changed the logo and everything to Jack State to separate themselves, because when Dion went to Jackson State, Jackson State went on the map. People started saying JSU. Well, now there's confusion between Jacksonville State and Jackson State with JSU. So, there's a lot of confusion. Jacksonville State now kind of goes by Jack State instead of JSU, but Jacksonville University goes by Jacks as well. There's a lot of confusion there for sure.
The only reason I asked that question, I have a friend of mine who went there for a little bit, I believe, and did his brother played there. So, and he always, whenever he brings that up in conversation, I know what he's talking about. As a guy that covers Auburn, I know about Jacksonville State. I know they're in this state and the football program, stuff like that. But then other people are like, oh, he played down in Florida in college. It's like, no. That's in Alabama. But yeah, so that is the main reason I asked that question. You're one in the FBS, very successful 8-4. And here's the thing, Chase, that got me all year. Everybody was talking about James Madison, why they should be playing in postseason. Man, nobody was giving respect to Jacksonville State when it comes to that conversation, but they do get in because of the lack of bowl teams.
Yeah, and you go back to when this announcement was made a couple of years ago that Jacksonville State was going to move up to the FBS, and even in the preseason this year, if you had told me Jacksonville State was going to even be eligible for a bowl game and the number of wins, I wouldn't have believed you. I mean, it's a big step up. So the fact that we're talking about Jacksonville State playing in the New Orleans Bowl Saturday is incredible. And for those of us who have been around this program for a long time, who went to school there, it's amazing to see where this program is because, again, for a long time, we thought this would never be the case, that Jacksonville State would never be in the FBS. That wasn't probably even an option. And so the fact that they are now and the fact that they had the season they did, it's truly incredible. And to start the way they did against the Conference USA team in UTEP back in week 0 and got the win, and that kind of started the season off in the right way, really propelled them up in the right way. But, to be sitting here right now saying that Jacksonville State's playing in a bowl game this Saturday it's truly incredible.
Before we really look at the season for Jacksonville State, I will say this. We need one thing to happen. We need Jacksonville State and Troy to figure something out and get on the field again. Now that they're both in the FBS, the old timers, everybody, because, right now it is Troy and South Alabama. That's looked at as a rivalry. But a lot of people, I don't think, know that back in the day, Jacksonville State and Troy, that was the rivalry when they were both at the time when, before they called it FCS, but back when they were down both at that level.
Yeah, it was a huge rivalry. And like you said, a lot of the older fans still despise the Troy Trojans. And it's funny because a lot of people in school now, or even who've been at Jack State recently, don't really understand that rivalry. But again, a lot of the older fans do. And I'll say I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. But I would love to see it happen. I would love to see the two teams play, but I would not expect that anytime soon.
Well, just on the joking side, I know one other team in this state won't play Jacksonville State anytime soon. That is the Auburn Tigers. So that's another one.
Right. Yes, for sure. They'll just go back to 2015, and we'll see why on there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So this, like I said, this year they go 8-4 this season, and I guess for you, kind of bad for you because they had a lot of weekday games. So they get to call a lot of those games because they're playing during the week. But also, that's probably really good exposure the program got this year because you had 5 consecutive weeks. Had a 1 Thursday, 2 Tuesday, and 2 Wednesday nights. So they had some really good exposure this year playing on those weekday games.
Yes, they did. And, folks will tell you there's some recruits right now that say, I didn't really know about you, but I saw you playing on ESPNU on a Tuesday night. So it was a huge recruiting tool, huge exposure for the football team and for the university. It's kind of like a built-in commercial for Jacksonville State football. The way they were able to win some of those games too, and coming from behind down, 21-7 or whatever at halftime and coming back and winning the game. I mean, that's just a built-in commercial for your football program to be on national television, to win the way they do, to have a coach on the sideline like Rich Rod. I mean, it was great exposure having those national television games. And that's one of the bonuses of moving up to Conference USA and moving up to the FBS is that you're going to have those opportunities to be on national television, and Jack State took advantage of those this year for sure.
Yeah, and how was this team able to make that transition and be successful? Obviously, you mentioned Rich Rod being the head coach. I mean, you got a guy that has led Power 5 programs and has done well. Obviously, from what he did at West Virginia, most notably. But for this team, just making that transition in year one to be this successful.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's a lot of these guys who have been a part of the Jacksonville State football program with the previous coaches. They've been a part of it when they were in the OVC, when they were in the ASUN, and now the Conference USA. And so I think for a lot of these guys, it was just they are now on the biggest stage of college football. They're in the FBS. They knew what it takes to be at that level, and they took advantage of that. But I think a lot of it does go to the coaching staff, to Rich Rod and the great staff that he has to get them ready for what they were going to be up against. I mean, these teams, there's no doubt, were bigger, faster, stronger than what they're used to seeing in the FCS. And I think he did a great job in the offseason preparing them for what they were going to see. But these guys just bought into it from day one to this transition, knowing that they're going to be the foundation for Jacksonville State football in the FBS, and they bought into that, and they've laid a great foundation for what Gamecock football is going to be about. But credit the coaching staff and the players for buying in, and really some great talent on the field as well. Some guys who, have made a name for themselves now, but definitely could have been on the roster at bigger schools, but chose to stay and chose to buy into what Jacksonville State was doing.
Looking at this team offensively, and if people have forgotten what Rich Rod offense looks like, it's going to run. They're going to run the football with the quarterback and the running backs. They are fifth nationally in rushing yards per game this year, 232.3. Running back Malik Jackson, he's one of the best in Conference USA, 7 touchdowns, 860. But the quarterback, Zion Webb, 638 on the ground. And, he has had to split some time, with some other quarterbacks. But just his play this year, what has stood out to you the most?
He's a seventh-year senior, so he's been around a while, and he's got a lot of experience, and he's struggled being healthy the last few years. He has struggled with injury. So this year he came out, and I felt like, especially at the beginning of the season, now he struggled with some injuries mid-season, came back and was good the rest of the year. But starting out the season, you could tell he was finally 100%. Like, this is the Zion Webb that we've been waiting to see the last couple of years because he's healthy. And he's got great legs. He's a great decision maker and a great leader for this team. And I know there were some other quarterbacks on the roster. We saw Logan Smothers throughout the year as well. But you could tell Rich Rod wanted to utilize Zion Webb and wanted to give him every opportunity he could, because that's the kind of quarterback that fits in Rich Rod's system. You mentioned he's going to run you and run you and run you. He's going to have 5 or 6 running backs on the field. He's going to have a quarterback that can run, and Zion Webb fit that. So what you think you think back to West Virginia and Pat White and some of the other quarterbacks that Rich Rod has coached. Zion Webb kind of fits that. He's that kind of running quarterback. He can throw the ball as well, but he's really dynamic on the ground. And I think we finally saw this season the Zion Webb we were waiting to see, who was healthy for the most part. Again, he did struggle with some injuries, but who is really a dynamic playmaker. And that really helped the Gamecocks throughout this season.
Yeah, I was about to mention Pat White, before you mentioned it, because, when I think of West Virginia, with what they did, the best they were at quarterback was with Pat White and what he was able to do, because he was really good passer. I mean, everybody remembers how good of a runner he was, but he also had that ability to beat you with his arm, and Zion Webb's that kind of player too as well.
Yeah, he is, and he has a great arm and great receivers as well, and they were about 4 or 5 guys going into the season. We knew there was 2 good receivers for this Jacksonville State team, but man, some guys really stepped up at wide receiver as well this year. So there was 4 or 5 guys who at any given time could make a play on the ball, and I think that was big as well for Zion, having some good targets to go to.
And defensively, one if not the best defense in Conference USA this year. First in points allowed at around 20 points. second in yards allowed, first in sacks. That's led by Chris Hardy with 8.5 on the year. He's had 3 games with 2 sacks or more. Just the defense. How have you seen this defense this season?
Man, they're incredible. They're so fast. Credit Zach Alley, defensive coordinator. He is one of the youngest defensive coordinators in the country. He was the youngest when he was the DC at Louisiana Monroe. Rich Rod brought him from Monroe to Jacksonville when Rich Rod went from the OC to head coach at Jacksonville State. So Zach Alley he's kind of you want to say a veteran defensive coordinator, but he's only 31 years old. He's a younger guy, but he's really smart coaching the defense. And he's had these guys ready to go every week. Great game plan, but just a lot of speed on this defense. And, some you look at them and you look at them on paper, you see them on the field. They're not big. I mean, they were outsized in every game this season, but yet they were still able to make plays and do what they did. 7 takeaways in the first 2 games. They forced 7 takeaways. And I mean, that was a great start for the defense this season. And they really kept that up throughout the year, but they kept Jacksonville State in a lot of these games. In a lot of these games, like the South Carolina game. I mean, they kept him in there against Coastal Carolina, against a really good Grayson McCall, quarterback there at Coastal Carolina. They held him at that point of the season. He hadn't been held to the yardage that they held him to. So Jacksonville State's defense was kind of a catalyst for this year. We talk a lot about the offense, but the defense kept them in a lot of these games and helped get the wins that they did. I was super impressed with the defense and again, undersized in every matchup, but they got the job done.
Yeah, I'm just going to throw this out there at you. I know earlier in the year they played Liberty and lost 31-13. Had they been able to play in that game, do you think it would have been a different outcome, different game than it was the first time?
I don't know. Liberty's good. They're really good, and their quarterback was able to do things to Jacksonville State's defense that no one else could do this season. And so just the way they are dynamically on offense, I mean, Jacksonville State turned the ball over several times in that game, which really hurt them. But that was a super fun game on a Tuesday or Wednesday night or something. But that was a really fun game, and it was fun to see Liberty come to Jacksonville State, play under the lights, and that was a great matchup.
So this week, the New Orleans Bowl, which you basically, I guess you're going in Louisiana's backyard. You're going into their state to play them. It is 115 over on ESPN. Jacksonville State right now is listed as a 3-point favorite. 57.5 the over-under. Louisiana struggled the last month of the season. There was a point during the year I thought I was looking ahead about midway of the year. So, okay, they're playing Troy. That could be a big game for Troy. That could be a stumbling block for Troy trying to get back to some about championship game, which it was a good game those two played. But Louisiana struggled toward the end of the year. They weren't good against the run either. I think giving up like 190 a game the last month of the season. When you look up this matchup with Jacksonville State and Louisiana, what sticks out to you?
Well, you just said it. Their kind of inability to defend the run. And that's Jacksonville State likes to expose people who can't defend the run. So you know that that's going to be a lot of Jacksonville State's game plan is just run it. And so I think that's one of the major things that sticks out to me about this game. But they do have some playmakers. They play Sunbelt and I don't think people realize this or think about this, but that's a really good football week in and week out in the Sunbelt. So they're battle tested. Their record may not show it, but they're battle tested and they've seen teams, better than Jacksonville State, and so. I'm looking forward to this one. You look at the records and you think, oh, well, Jacksonville State's better. Well, this is going to be a really hard-fought game, and you mentioned it too. It's in their state in Louisiana, and so I think this is going to be a really fun game. But look for Jacksonville State to try to run for about 600 yards on Saturday afternoon, and I think we'll see probably 6 or 7 running backs in the game. I mean, they're going to try to expose the Louisiana defense there with the run game.
So before I let you go, can we get a score prediction for the game?
Oh man, let's see. I think I'll say 42-28 Jacksonville State.
All right, sounds good, and that will be hitting that over. So, we're in the state of Alabama. We're not really supposed to do that, but if anybody is listening outside the state of Alabama, I guess you can hit that over if you want to take Chase's advice on that one. But anyways, Chase, this has been fun having you on. I hope we do this again sometime. But if the listeners and viewers wanted to follow you, where can they find you online?
Yeah, on Twitter at Chase Rob Sports. Give me a follow, and on Facebook as well, Chase Robinson. So yeah, we'd love to connect with everybody, and would love to come back on with you. But I appreciate you having me on. Love talking Jack State football.
Oh yeah, absolutely, Chase. Appreciate the time, and look forward to talking again sometime down the road.
Thanks, Phillip.
A new soccer club is coming to Dothan, Alabama, and you get to name the team. From now until December 24th, cast your vote for your favorite team name or submit your own name. Everyone who votes will get a pair of tickets to the opening night. Limit 1 pair per household. Go to 969thelegend.com to vote. That was 2 great conversations with 2 awesome guests today. Thanks to both for coming on this edition of the Phillip Jordan Show. Now, as we get out of here, real quickly, I want to just go over the schedule, the bowl schedule, and just some sporting events going on over the weekend to keep an eye on. In the bowl schedule on Saturday, the Myrtle Beach Bowl will kick off at 10 a.m. Central Time on ESPN. 6-6 Georgia Southern will be playing 9-3 Ohio in that one. Georgia Southern is a 3.5-point favorite in that one. I'll take Georgia Southern to win that one. The Cricket Celebration Bowl between Howard at 6-5 and Florida A&M 11-1. That will be an 11 a.m. kickoff on ABC. Florida A&M, they are a 6.5-point favorite, and I am going to go with Florida A&M. In the New Orleans Bowl, we just mentioned it with Chase. Jacksonville State at 8-4 will be playing Louisiana at 6-6, 115 over on ESPN. Jacksonville State's a 2.5-point favorite in this one. I am going to go with Jacksonville State to take the victory. In the New Mexico, I about messed it up. When I wrote this one down, I about messed it up. It's the Avocados from Mexico Cure Bowl. That is a mouthful. Miami, Ohio at 11-2 will be playing Appalachian State, who is 8-5. 2:30 ABC. App State is a 6.5-point favorite, and I'm going to go with App State to win the game. In the New Mexico Bowl, and having them right next to each other didn't help me either. New Mexico State, that threw me off too. At 10-4, will be at Fresno State, 8-4. 4:45 ESPN. New Mexico State's a 3.5-point favorite here. I'm going with New Mexico State because, hey, they upset Auburn. They showed how good they are. They played a really good game. It's literally just scored more points, especially, any game I know, but up and down game. But I'm going to go New Mexico State. This one in the LA Bowl between hometown UCLA at 7-5. We'll be playing Boise State at 8-5. This is a 6:30 game over on ABC. UCLA, they are a 4-point favorite, and I am going to go with UCLA. The home team is going to get the victory here. And then finally in the Independence Bowl, which I remember this was an SEC Bowl, Cal at 6-6 will be playing Texas Tech at 6-6. 8:15 ESPN. Texas Tech is a 3-point favorite, and I am going to take the favorites here, and I am going to go with Texas Tech to win the game. Now, we've predominantly been football because we're still in football season, but as we kind of wind this down, we're in bowl season, into playoff and all that stuff. We'll get into more college basketball here in the near future. But let's look at some notable SEC games going on this weekend. On Saturday at 11 a.m. on ESPN2, you'll have LSU at number 19 Texas. At 1:30, also on ESPN2, you'll have Texas A&M at number 4 Houston. At 4:30 on CBS, number 9 North Carolina versus number 14 Kentucky. At 7 o'clock on Fox, Alabama will travel, take on number 8 Creighton. And then at 9 o'clock on ESPN2, NC State will be at Tennessee. And on Sunday, Southern Cal will be at Auburn. That's a 12 o'clock game on ESPN. And for people out there that are NFL fans, on Saturday, we got 3 important games for all these teams when it comes to playoffs. 7-6, both teams. Vikings at Bengals, 12 o'clock on NFL Network. All the Saturday games are on NFL Network. 7-6 Steelers at 7-6 Colts, 3:30. And then you have the 7-6 Broncos at the 9-4 Lions. Then on Sunday, some notable games. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers will be at the Green Bay Packers. Both teams are 6-7. Tampa Bay trying to get an edge in the NFC South. The Packers trying to kind of get back in that race. They had some momentum before last week. They lost against the Giants. They had won 3 in a row. But that's 12 o'clock on CBS. The Cowboys at 10-3 will be at the 7-6 Bills. Both teams trying to capitalized on big wins last week. That will be 325 on Fox. The Ravens at 10-3 will be at the Jacksonville Jaguars at 8-5. That is your NBC primetime game. And then on Monday Night Football will be the Eagles and the Seahawks. Eagles 10-3 trying to bounce back from that loss against Cowboys, and the Seahawks trying to stay in the playoff hunt. 7:15. You can watch that either on ABC or ESPN. And that's going to do it for today's show. Now, this week we're Tuesday and Friday. We're going to have a show on Monday. Sunday night, I am supposed to be talking with Roll Tide Wire on AJ Spur. So we will be talking Alabama stuff with AJ coming up on Monday morning. That will be the Alabama preview for the upcoming college football playoff game. So I'm very excited, as always, to chat with AJ. Anyways, I hope everybody has a great weekend. Enjoy the bowl games. Enjoy the basketball. Enjoy the NFL games if that's what you want to watch too. Enjoy the sports. And we'll be back on Monday morning to talk to you with AJ Spur. Anyways, until then, bye-bye.